So lately, there's been a whole lot of updates regarding Phantom Liberty. The new trailer, of course, interviews with the cast and the developers, as well as a hands-on look at gameplay from early on in the story. And it's clear, once you take a look at all of this, that Cyberpunk is not merely getting a classic story add-on, which looks good enough in and of itself, but with the arrival of 1.7 as well, this game is soon gonna look and feel completely different. And after taking a close look at footage and news, I present to you 10 changes that are coming which will completely alter our experience with Cyberpunk 2077 forevermore. First up, no surprise here, but we are getting a whole bunch of new weapons, as well as new iconic variants of existing weapons. In the gameplay footage, I noticed an iconic Sitara called Order, which is awesome, as we won't have to rely on the Maelstrom vendor for a legendary Sitara anymore. There's also a new SMG called Warden, a new revolver, which I didn't catch the name of, and a new katana called Arata. That's purely what they've shown in released footage though. I'm sure there's plenty more to discover. Also, the way weapon mods work is looking to become a little more complex. Not only are we getting mods which do entirely new things, but it also won't simply be the case of a straight-up improvement anymore. If we look at the two mods here on this Warden SMG, we can see that they come with both benefits and drawbacks. One of these mods will increase magazine capacity by 25%, but also make reloading take 20% longer. Now, the green of this mod would suggest that these are uncommon tier mods, and my best guess would be that getting higher quality mods will both increase the benefits and reduce the drawbacks which these introduce. Looking at this menu image still, it's also clear that we're getting a huge facelift to how weapon stats are displayed. No longer is it a simple comparison of fire rate versus damage, but alongside that, we can see reload speed, effective range, and weapon handling. Now, I don't quite know how they'll quantify weapon handling, but what I would say, having tested every weapon in the current version of the game, is that some certainly feel clunkier to handle than others. We can see here that the Saratoga has a pretty high handling score, and in the base version of the game, I'd defo say it's one of the best handling guns. Alternatively, something like Guts, I'd imagine, would have an incredibly low handling score traded off against extremely high damage. But in addition to a stat rework and new weapons which kind of feel familiar to the weapons we're used to, Pavel Sasko alluded to some even more exciting weapons which could be found in Dogtown's black market. Let's have a listen to what he says here.
The black market also is a place where you can find new illegal weapons and goods. They are some of the most powerful items in the world, but are often much more dangerous to use.
Super powerful weapons and items which are also dangerous to use. Now, granted, he may just be referring to the danger element when it comes to illegal cyberware. After all, that's going to be a whole new system which we'll come onto in a bit. But the idea of having weapons which are actually dangerous to the user, that would be pretty cool. I keep thinking of this shot from the second teaser. Now, that's the same kind of laser beam as we see from the Chimera mech in the new trailer. And I don't want to create false hype by theorizing that we get to use this, but my guess would be that this is an equipable heavy weapon that maybe is so powerful that blasting it for more than a few seconds causes the gun and possibly the user to overheat and lose health. I don't know, just an idea, but my point is that it looks like they're going a lot more in on things having drawbacks as well as benefits. Also, in the black market, this chromed up dude named Harold, I believe, shows off these flamethrower arms.
Ain't seen nothing yet. Check this out. Or this shit here.
Honestly, I just really hope we get to use a couple of these ourselves. I mean, they'd be utterly brutal, come on, but they would be so awesome. Final thing I noticed when it comes to weapon changes is that katanas, or perhaps I should say swords, as Witcher players can also use Gwynblythe, which is Welsh for White Wolf, in 2077. So we can use swords to deflect bullets. Now, I'm pretty sure this is only going to be unlocked with a perk. You'll have to spec a bit into reflexes before you have the skill to do that, and then I'd assume you can scale that skill up to, say, deflect bullets back at enemies. But what this means, most excitingly, is that in some dark corridor of Night City, armed with a glowing red-edged katana, it will be possible to recreate one of the greatest Star Wars scenes of all time. Next up, clothing will no longer be the basis of your armor rating, save for a few bits of actual armor like ballistic vests. This actually makes so much sense. Logically, if you think about it, why should some thin layers of fabric give you a ton of armor? Now, I guess this means you can wear whatever you want purely for appearance in the menu or when riding bikes, though that said, we've already got the outfit feature where we can appear in one outfit and be wearing another, so that's not an entirely new thing. Instead of clothing armor though then, it looks like they're going all in on the cyberware front, as I mentioned just a minute minute ago. But they're now introducing a cyberware capacity system. So rather than maxing out every slot with whatever items you can buy with the attributes you have, it's instead going to be a bit more nuanced and lore-friendly. Now, it's not quite clear how exactly this capacity limiter will work. We haven't quite got as much news or footage on that, but presumably different items of cyberware, I guess, will fill that meter at different levels. Once we hit, or perhaps approach capacity, our health will start to reduce, and perhaps there'll be some stat debuffs as well. However, you're not going to go full-on cyber psycho. After all, I don't know how that could work, what with us the player being in control of the character. I guess we could hallucinate people on the street being attackers. Some random dude could suddenly glitch into Adam Smasher. I don't know. But that would probably soon get old, and it's probably better the way they've done it. Again, like with weapons, they seem to be going all in on buffs, being a balancing act. No doubt, new cyberware will provide a number of smaller debuffs alongside their insane abilities. 2-second cooldown Sandevistan? Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that method goes out the window. That said, I will be doing my very best to exploit the new mechanics and create yet more utterly broken, super powerful new builds. And perhaps we'll even have more freedom to switch up some core parts of the build mid-playthrough. In the current version of the game, you have to decide pretty early on if you want top-tier benefits of certain stats due to the limited attribute points. Hopefully now it'll be easier to switch a few things further down the line if we so choose. Also, this isn't entirely cyberware based, at least not yet, but it sounds as though heals are more built in with the cyberware systems now, meaning they have cooldowns. And it's no longer going to be the case that we can simply spam inhalers throughout every fight, which honestly I think is probably for the best. In addition to a complete rework of the cyberware system, Pavel Sasko also confirmed the introduction of 3 new features specifically, which I guess we'll be getting from the black markets. Let's have a listen.
A new cyberware capacity system, which leads you to push your body to the limit and give you new abilities to deliver more thrilling gameplay experiences, like the air dash or the ability to see the enemies through the walls, or change your appearance to lose the heat.
Okay, so first up, air dash. I feel like I've been using a workaround version of this for an entire playthrough already, but it will be nice to have a proper, presumably little propulsion-powered dash to use in mid-air of sorts, and it'll no doubt allow us to reach further and potentially higher areas. What I do in the current version of the game to simulate this is combine the epic fortified ankles or reinforced tendons with the maneuvering system to do a double jump, followed by a mid-air dodge, which then allows us to do a third jump. Also, holding aim during this with the epic ankles keeps you afloat for longer, and it's actually insane the distances you can jump using this technique. It's actually completely changed my opinion of the epic fortified ankles, which I was a bit critical of during my legs ranked video. Anyway, Pavel also mentioned seeing enemies through the walls, which, Ping does that already, but presumably this method will allow us to do this without having to hack the enemy's subnet and potentially alerting them to our presence. Finally, changing your appearance to lose the heat. No doubt this relates to the appearance-changing masks that we've seen in the trailers, and it sounds as though we'll be able to use this in conjunction with the new police system to escape from them without necessarily having to run away. Plus, it fits right in with the whole spy nature of the DLC as well, and I can't wait to try it out. Now, we haven't really seen much gameplay of this, but throughout Night City, the NCPD, or Barguest if you're in Dogtown, are now going to be a much more integrated part of the world. No longer will they randomly spawn on foot around you, but they're going to be much more immersively arriving in cars. It sounds like their AI has been fully revamped, and I'd imagine they'll employ more tactics to boxing you in now, let's say. And don't forget, we can engage in car chases with them now. The police system is going to go hand in hand with the arriving vehicle combat mode as well, and I'm going to go out on a limb here and assume this is just going to arrive as a 1.7 feature, not necessarily needing Phantom Liberty. What's more, gangs will also be engaging with the police on a far more common basis. I've encountered a couple times in the base game where police cars have been chasing down gang members, but they always felt like very deliberate and hand-placed specific instances. Whereas now, I guess this will be a much more common thing happening more continuously. As for our Star Wanted level, that's going to have a lot more meaning too. MaxTac aren't just showing up in the trailers for cool cinematics, they're actually going to have a far larger part to play from here on out. Rack up too many wanted stars and the police will assume you're a cyber psycho and send in MaxTac. I'd imagine they'll be armed to the teeth, incredibly powerful, and very tough to escape from or take down. There's also talk of boss level enemies showing up at the culmination of these police chases. Perhaps that'll be part of a side quest line to take out all the law enforcement bosses, or I think more likely you'll just be getting some ultra powerful solo units to face down if you get too high a wanted level. I mean, that's at least one way to set yourself apart from GTA. The other side to this system overhaul then is vehicle combat. Now, there hasn't been a ton of gameplay footage circulating with this, unlike a lot of the new combat showcases, but certain media outlets, and I think some bigger YouTubers, have been able to test out this new mechanic. We've seen a couple brief clips showcasing vehicle combat in the trailers, though far as I can tell, that just looks very similar to the scripted vehicle combat moments we got in the base game. What I'm curious to see is how we can utilize vehicle combat in third person, because I don't know about you, but in cars especially, driving in third person is significantly easier. Apparently though, there's also going to be a new system for blown out tires, not just for us, but for enemies too, and if you're riding a bike, you will be able to use a katana to slash out the tires and charging ports of cop cars. All we need is a jousting pole, and we can recreate one of the best scenes from Scooby-Doo 2. Now, the fact that they've not really shown much footage of this may mean they've still got a bit of polishing to do on this feature, though at the same time they have shown us a hell of a lot of stuff already, and no doubt they want to keep a few more surprises up their sleeve. Most likely there'll be another huge marketing push come September with both 1.7 and Phantom Liberty dropping, at which point I'd hope they'll show off some more vehicle combat stuff. If not, just release 1.7 a couple weeks before Phantom Liberty and let us discover it for ourselves. Now legally, they've said they can't update the game, which would change the spec requirements without giving 90 days notice, and that would unfortunately mean that the start of September is the earliest they can drop 1.7, crushing my theory that we get a release date of August 20th, 2023, which in-game is the day that Silverhand nuked Arasaka Tower. A couple more exciting features that have been circulating about vehicles though is that in classic Bond fashion, some vehicles themselves will also be receiving on-board weapon systems, including Gatling gun headlights and Seeker missiles. Additionally, the hacking mechanic will be extended to cars, allowing us to grind them to a halt or just explode. Finally, Pavel Sasko has also confirmed that there'll be an infinitely repeatable Radiant quest of stealing vehicles. This will apparently come with challenges like driving the vehicle to a certain place without taking damage, or hacking a car as we follow it. This will seemingly allow us to maintain an infinite number of cars from off the street and acquire every type of vehicle in Night City, which wasn't possible in the base game. The whole buying from fixers mechanic is also getting scrapped, and it instead seems like Muammar Reyes is going to be our go-to dude for cars. He'll also have a website where we can buy a great many of them similar to GTA, and some will be weaponized. Now, it's been misquoted a lot that Pavel Sasko said Mama Wells and not Muammar Reyes for these car quests, though in a recent stream he has straight up confirmed that he meant Muammar Reyes, and it just came out sounding like Mama Wells. Cyberware and attributes are now going to be more intrinsically linked than ever. I noticed this when examining how optical camo appears to have changed a bit. It'll for starters no longer last for 15 seconds it seems, but rather a mere 6. Also, it's specifically stated now to only reduce visibility to 70%. Makes sense, and it's kind of how it worked already. People could just about see us if we got too close, but personally I think it's nice to have a quantifiable stat on that. Where it gets interesting though is how optical camo is referred to as being cool attuned, and with each point in cool, optical camo's duration will be boosted by a further 0.1 seconds. The fact that it then goes up to 2 seconds I guess confirms that attribute points will still be sticking at about 20 max. This attunement mechanic then is going to bind together cyberware and attributes a hell of a lot more. Where previously certain pieces of cyberware were simply locked behind specific attribute requirements, I guess now attributes are going to continue to improve the effectiveness of our cyberware dynamically as we level up, which in my opinion is a more fun, more rewarding way to play the game and really allows for further build complexity. A stealth ninja now with a lot of cool points won't simply have more powerful throwing knives, but the attribute will also directly affect their ability to remain undetected for longer. But I can't talk about attributes without going some more into perks. In 1.7, the entire perk system is completely changing. No longer will we have different perk segments, but as this online image shows, CDPR are now adopting the more contemporary tiered perk system. As we can see, all perks within one attribute are now kind of linked into the same tree. And it looks like we'll have a system of core perks, what I'd assume to be core abilities, followed by these sort of sub-perks, smaller boosts or abilities coming off of the bigger ones. For example, this one that allows us us to continue to shoot while sliding is clearly now tied in with whatever this central ability is. It also seems, despite abandoning the entirely separate segments, they have still segmented these perks to some degree. We've got weapons on the left, blades on the right, whilst in the middle, judging by the icons, it appears to be reserved for some dash-based abilities. No doubt this ties back to the air dash that Pavel Sasko mentioned, but if they're thematically tiered horizontally, it appears they're then tiered vertically to align with the number of attribute points you have in that skill. Not only now will you need a certain number of attributes to unlock certain perks then, but you also need to have prerequisite perks earlier along the tree to unlock the higher tier ones. One more thing which really stands out just for this image on reflexes though is just how many of the gun-based perks from assault and handguns do just seem to be gone. Currently they take up 2/3 of the reflex perks, and this change really shows that they're moving away from the incremental numbers-based stat boosts to make perks a far more tangible way to vary the actual gameplay experience. Having a whole load of specific abilities for specific builds is infinitely better, in my opinion, than perks which simply make damage numbers bigger or have more red numbers than white, which currently is what many of the perks do in just slightly different ways. Also, and there's no leaked images of this one, but it is confirmed that we are getting the 6th Relic skill tree. Relic technology is going to become a much more utilized feature in Phantom Liberty, with Songbird even using it to communicate with us somehow. Check out my theory video on that, by the way, when you're done here. But ultimately, what this is somehow going to translate to is a specific set of unlockable, very powerful abilities, which we'll buy on the separate ecosystem of relic points found around Dogtown. Now, this sounds very similar to the mutagen tree which was introduced in The Witcher 3's Blood and Wine expansion, a kind of late-game secondary level-up system to give you even more abilities once you've sort of maxed out the base skill tree. Of course, one of the most talked about changes which will alter the layout of Night City forever is the introduction of its new district, Dogtown. Now, from early footage, we can already see that this is a region unlike anything we've seen before. And at first glance, this gritty tone set around some magnificent buildings, as well as the black market which Pavel Sasko talks us through, all kinda reminds me of the lower levels of Coruscant. Hell, even this Harold dude, despite still being human, just makes me think of one of those droids with a quirky personality. I'm sure once getting in there and playing it for real though, it will very much feel like its own thing. And there's a weird sort of dichotomy going on with Dogtown. You see, the entire Pacifica region was originally built with the intention of being a holiday paradise resort in the south of Night City. Buildings like the stadium were going to bring new levels of tourism to the place, and this kind of functioned as intended for a couple decades. But during the Unification War in 2069, nice, funding was pulled for all the projects in Pacifica at the time. Investors fled on the fear that it would become a battleground, and all of these lavish buildings like this rip-off French Louvre were abandoned by officials. The place was left to the likes of the Voodoo Boys, and as we now know, Kurt Hansen, the Colonel, and possibly the mysterious General who's mentioned on a shard in the base game. So, the uniqueness of this place is that it has the lavish architecture of, say, the city centre, melded with the lawless expanse of, say, the Badlands or Northside. Though it's not entirely lawless. As we can see, the Barghest militia, ex-Militech soldiers controlled by Kurt Hansen, do maintain a peace of sorts. Here's what he has to say in some gameplay footage.
You've come to the right place. NCPD, gang wars, not in Dogtown. Taxes, who the
Check this out.
needs them? In Dogtown, I keep your business safe as long as you abide by my rules.
Now, in an interview with Igor Sazinski, the lead narrative director, he said that Kurt is based off of South American drug lords, the type of people who invest into a community, gain the people's loyalty, only to use it as cover-up for, well, I suppose in that instance, their drugs business. But here, I'd imagine it goes beyond that. The tax-free trade zone element has also been talked about as making Dogtown the #1 place to conduct deals free of corpo taxes, hence granting the ability to acquire stuff even more high-tech and by extension dangerous than the rest of Night City. What we also seem to be getting in this district specifically, which I guess will have to remain fairly localized to just Dogtown, is a wider scope of narrative choices. Now, I'm basing this off of a few things we've heard. For example, we know that there's going to be the option to swear an oath of allegiance to the NUSA. This was the entire focus of that first teaser that we got a long time ago now, and presumably our choice to take the oath or not will likely affect our relationship with Johnny, Rosalind Myers, and I wouldn't be surprised if it had a knock-on effect on others too. People have also talked about various smaller encounters with NPCs, with places like the Black Market having a lot of effort put in to make it feel even more vibrant and alive than the markets of the base game. It's also been confirmed that Phantom Liberty will offer one new potential ending to the base game. This will give us a grand total of 6, or 5 proper ones because the Path of Least Resistance doesn't exactly offer any ending content, though what's not entirely clear about this new ending is whether that in and of itself could split off into multiple branches of its own. All the current proper endings, after all, do each have 2 ways that they themselves could end, though there is some overlap there when it comes to choices like giving your body to Johnny. Could Phantom Liberty's new ending split off in a similar way? Well, we don't know, and quite frankly, that is something I'm excited to discover for myself when playing through this DLC. Just a cool idea to think about though. What is also confirmed though is that unlocking the new game ending will be conditional on which ending you get to Phantom Liberty itself, confirming that the DLC too has multiple endings, though the idea that one will give you a new overall ending whilst others won't is a little bit sad, and I'm kind of hoping it's not a 2-option split only, because I worry it'll become a thing of everyone only wanting the ending to Phantom Liberty, which also unlocks a new main ending. I'm kind of hoping it's more a balance of choices made throughout the DLC, so you can still get multiple endings in Phantom Liberty, but you'll just have to have made enough good choices along the way to get a high enough affinity with people to unlock the new main ending. I don't know, that's just my thoughts. I just don't want to feel obliged per se to pick a certain ending. I just think it'd be nice to be rewarded with a new ending for playing the DLC more attentively and thoroughly. Anyway, CDPR have also confirmed that the DLC won't be featuring new romance options, with their focus wanting to be on the spy stuff. And I mean, I kind of get that, but at the same time, if they're wanting to base this on a Bond-esque spy thriller story, then I feel like it'd be fitting to throw in a few flings here and there. Nothing as deep and meaningful as Judy or Panam, but surely another Meredith-level encounter or two. I mean, President Myers might be feeling real grateful to be alive after her plane's spaceship crash, and if it were James Bond in V's shoes, it's pretty clear exactly what he would do in that situation. Now, I'm not going to write off more fling-type romances entirely. After all, they may just have meant that we shouldn't get our hopes up about a full-on romance with Songbird building throughout the DLC or something, but I wouldn't hold your breath for anything within the new story itself. Not even some hardcore hand-holding. However, what they have seemingly confirmed, though this area again is a bit foggy, is that currently, existing romances will get a little more content, i.e. hopefully Judy, Panam, River or Kerry might crop up again for some reason at some point. Now, that could just be them showing up in the new ending to the main story like they do in many of the existing ones. And if I were to bet, that's what I'd say it would likely be, so as to not segue us away in the middle of the story involving Idris Elba and everyone else. Finally, Phantom Liberty will change Cyberpunk forever by making it look, feel, and play nicer. It's no secret that Cyberpunk was held back at launch by the devs' attempts to make it run on last-gen consoles, and this, it turns out, wasn't good for anyone. It didn't really run on PS4 anyway, whilst everyone else was left with a game failing to reach its full potential. They compromised, and I think come Phantom Liberty, they realized they'd compromised too much. And cutting last-gen loose now, much as that sucks for people who only own those consoles, it does mean not just Phantom Liberty, but the entire game now just looks nicer. The gameplay footage just comes across smoother, and from the fact that we've got multiple videos captured across both PC and consoles which all look notably improved, I'd say it's going to feel right down to its core like we're playing more of an improved sequel after this, or a remaster let's say, kinda like what they did with The Witcher 3, but better. I mean, just look at the lightning effects on these Mantis blades. Hell, the blades themselves look improved, and lightning, sparks, explosions, it all just feels much more spectacular. Though of course you will have to own a next-gen console or a pretty powerful PC in order to play. Hell, I'm currently running my game with path tracing perfectly fine, and even I am going to have to upgrade certain parts of my PC to run this following 1.7. See, normally the majority of a game's load falls to the graphics card. So what surprised me here is that you're also going to need a top-of-the-line processor in order to run decent ray tracing or even just maximum graphics, whereas before it mostly fell to the graphics card and you could get away with a mid to low range processor. So for any of my fellow tombs out there with a 30 or 40 series card who think they'll be fine at high settings, I'd definitely double check your other components. Of course, the annoying thing about upgrading a processor is it usually precipitates also buying a new motherboard, RAM, cooler, and maybe other stuff too. But it is what it is. A facelift as beautiful as this is of course going to come at a price, though to be honest, I am glad they're pushing the limits of what they can do this time, rather than stretching themselves too thin across massively varying hardware. Let's just hope it runs smooth out of the box this time, because a lot of AAA games nowadays aren't doing that, which, if you ask me, is pretty atrocious. Though I am pretty confident that CDPR aren't going to want to be repeating the mistakes of the past, and will likely be taking every precaution to ensure they release the game as smoothly and pristinely as they can, unlike the first time for PS4 users especially. As for currently existing playthroughs going into Phantom Liberty, people have wondered, with all these changes, whether you'll have to start afresh. And whilst it's likely worth doing another playthrough at some point from the beginning to experience all the new mechanics in the base game, it won't be necessary to start a new playthrough. And indeed, you can just dive into Phantom Liberty via an old save if you've completed the Voodoo Boy stuff in the main questline. Just don't be surprised if you have to respec all of your perks and possibly, in fact I hope, attributes too. Hell, they've even added a feature like with the Witcher DLCs to start a new playthrough just at the DLC itself. So if over the next 3 months you do want to get a character ready to jump into Phantom Liberty with, then I recommend checking out my video on 25 tips you can do right now before the DLC. Equally, if you're just now thinking of buying Cyberpunk by itself or indeed with Phantom Liberty, then the two together are currently 30% off, and if you buy through my link in the description, you'll also be supporting this channel, just like my amazing patrons, who as always, I extend my greatest thanks to. Thank you for watching, hopefully you found this one informative. I'm Sam Bram, and I'll see you soon in another video.